Welcome to Therapy Unlocked, where we discuss all things therapy from an unlocked perspective. I'm Emily Huffman, and I'm here with Katrina.
Hello, Katrina Mondragon, licensed professional counselor. All right, so like I said, I am a professional, but not your professional, so nothing we're going to talk about today should be taken as medical, legal, or otherwise advice. This podcast is purely for education and amusement. That is it. That's the disclaimer.
Education, amusement, and because I would like to be famous. So please like, subscribe, follow, engage, hate on us, join the conversation, find us on YouTube, find us on Instagram, find us anywhere where you listen to podcasts, because I love a creeper and I love a hater and I love a lover. So if you like the podcast, if you dislike the podcast, I'd like to hear from you. Did therapists ever say interesting and then you have to rethink your entire personality? That ever happened to you? I swear that's happened to me so many times. I don't even know why I still show up at therapy if I have to just reevaluate myself every time I go. What is the point?
That is the point.
What are you talking about? What are you talking about? No. What I'm talking about is when you casually mention something, and your therapist tilts their head, says a little, and then you're sitting there going, is this a main character arc? Is this a side quest? Do I have a personality disorder, or am I just unlikable? That's the general response. I mean, what is just a, I don't think I've just a ever in my life. Every whom I've got is, and that said though, it can lead to that accidental breakthrough. You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Like you're sitting there, and I was telling my therapist a story at one point in time where I was just talking about motherhood, and all of a sudden we're both crying. We're both hanging on by that last thread of womanhood and what have you. But that was a bit of a breakthrough, and then I should probably unpack that. Probably unpack that feeling of being a walking uterus.
Humans humaning.
I'm drawing a blank.
You're speechless at humans humaning?
Baby, you gotta give me more. I hit 2 of my talking points already.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You have to talk back.
Well, I am. Maybe a question.
Okay. It's just more like I was hoping any of those would trigger you. Hold on. We can cut this out. It's okay. Let's keep going here.
Trigger me to talk a little bit more in depth is what you want.
Yes.
Okay, a little bit more in depth about the part on the therapist and what they're thinking when they say that.
Yeah. There you go.
They may not actually be thinking a whole lot. They may have their own insecurities. They may not be thinking about you. They may be thinking, am I saying the right thing? Am I saying the next thing right? Or they may be focused on the words coming out of your mouth. Like, what are they going to say next? Is it the appropriate time for me to say what I have in my head? Or should I hold that and wait for the next moment where it'd be appropriate? So there's like a strategic timing of some things in therapy where it's appropriate to insert comment now, or maybe hold that thought for later.
Interesting. Or, you saying what you just said made me think of something that we drop in interpreting, in ASL interpreting, American Sign Language interpreting, which is those filler words that people need to throw in there. It may be in ASL we would bounce our hand or something along those lines just to give a visual indicator that we're listening. But some people say and yeah, that's right. Not to indicate any understanding or furthering of the conversation, but just to indicate that they are participating in said conversation. And we'll do the opposite. That's what?
That is something taught in school. To engage in the conversation is sometimes verbal, sometimes nonverbal. So you might notice a therapist do a thing that's nonverbal that looks kind of like this. It doesn't mean they saw the show that you saw. It means they hear you.
That.
Keep going.
It doesn't mean they saw the show that you saw. Go back to that. It doesn't mean they saw the show that you saw. I feel like that could be applied across the board in many a conversation. Just because I gave indication to you does not mean I saw the show that you saw.
Acknowledgement is not Yeah, I just acknowledged you. I wasn't saying
That's
I
right.
saw it too.
Acknowledge your final girl. That said, that's for my final fans who are hopping into chat. Uh, Emotional whiplash. Speaking of the accidental breakthrough, like you just said, that's absolutely an accident. That's a misunderstanding. So if I'm sitting here from the client perspective and I'm looking at the therapist and I've told them a story and I think they're seeing the show that I saw, and that maybe they have made a deep analyzation of my personality, but they're thinking, I would like Long John Silver's for lunch.
That's a bad therapist because they shouldn't be thinking about lunch while they're thinking about focusing on the client. You want to be fully present with the person that's in front of you, because if they're thinking about lunch while they're in their hour with you, they're not fully present in that moment. They're thinking about lunch later. You want someone fully present in the moment with you here and now.
Okay, now I've got it. Now I've got to ask you for your hot take. As an individual with ADHD, I feel often that I'm fully present and engaged, but also I am considering that Long John Silver's lunch. Do you think that's true and possible?
I do think people with ADHD can make good clinicians, yes, with the right accommodations and resources, yes. And they can have multiple trains of thought, is my understanding about ADHD. You can have multiple trains of thought going at the same time without breaks.
Yeah, they're all simultaneous. Having ADHD is a lot like having a metro station up here, right? It's not multiple trains of thought. They're buses. They're buses, they honk. Sometimes they get louder. They jump the road. Trains have to stay on a track. No, a bus can drive all over the place, right? So there is a metro bus depot inside this head of mine.
You
And
got a
sometimes, if
multipass?
there's a traffic jam. What's
You
that?
got a multipass?
I got a multipass. Multipass. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I do. I've got a multipass up in here, and there's several buses, and sometimes they're hopping all over the place. And yeah, I think I could if I were to be a clinician. Not that I ever would. I like being your hot and fresh, unlicensed and unqualified opinion here on Therapy Unlocked. But if I were a clinician, I guarantee you I would be simultaneously listening to the tea and thinking about the lunch. I wouldn't be able to help myself.
So you're not
Sometimes I do
distracted
that.
by it. You're not distracted by it. You can be holding space for both. There's a difference between being distracted by lunch over here and just having that thought of lunch and then also being with the client, being present. So, like, you're not detracting from your time with that client. And, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, if somebody is thinking about lunch
Yeah.
and they're distracted from hearing what they ought to be hearing, that could be a problem because what if you miss what would be helpful to have heard?
Right. What if you miss that? What if, let's touch on that for a second, because you're giving some great information here. What if, let's say you are doing, as you just said, you're holding that space for that thought, but you do become distracted and you do miss it. How do you recover?
Admit it. I'm sorry, I missed what you just said. Can you repeat yourself? Don't fake hearing things as a therapist. Like, ask the client to repeat themselves. Because that's number one, it's rude to just pretend to have heard someone.
Right.
And
Right.
number two, you might have missed like relevant information that might be coming up next. If they told you about someone's birthday and then later about someone's death, and it was relevant to that birthday that they had talked about earlier, but you missed the thing about the birthday,
Then
you
you're
can
missing a major, then you're missing their accidental breakthrough. So maybe they were pulling an accidental breakthrough from an unintentional verbal cue. And if you are distracted and not holding your attentiveness there, then you may miss their accidental breakthrough. Uh that's a fact. Have you had that
right.
occur before where you have been listening to a client tell a story and maybe they don't realize that they're giving you humor or they're giving you anecdote, they're giving you story time, tea time, and actually they're giving you repressed feelings and emotions, and their joke doesn't land, and when their joke doesn't land and they're analyzing themselves, uh that's an intentional thing on your part.
I have had the dark humor not land as humor. And I'm
There
like,
you go.
are
Yeah.
you okay? Like, is it active? And they're like, no, it was a joke.
Why do you feel you need to make a joke about that? Is probably the meanest thing a therapist ever said to me. Why do you feel you need to make a joke about that? Hey, that joke was fire. First of all, laugh, okay? But I need to make a joke because it's funny. Yeah, see,
humor
there's that silence I'm talking about.
silence silence can be useful, but so I was going to say the self-deprecating can be funny. There are plenty of self-deprecating comedians out there on like the, I don't know what they call it when they're touring, but there are plenty of self-deprecating comedians out there. But I would say all things in moderation. If the self-deprecating is too much, I mean, it's like eating too much chocolate cake or drinking too much water. You can drink too much water.
I think at the point you begin to confuse your self deprecating humor with your self awareness, you've gone too far. Okay. Because nobody is that hilariously filled with mishaps. We are not Mr. B. We are not. We wish we were. I kind of wish I was from time to time. I would like to rewrite my mishaps as comedy, but they're not. So if
Oh,
you start
sometimes
confusing,
comedy happens in tragedy. I have a friend who went to the beach last week and got sunburned, and then on his drive home, stung by a bee. Like that bee just flew at his car and stung him on his arm. So on his sunburnt arm, he got a bee sting, and guess what? He's mildly allergic, so it swelled up, and it's kind of funny, like horrible, but kind of funny. That in that timing.
but it would be funny if it happened to Ben Stiller. Would it be funny if it happened to Ben Stiller? Is a question I ask myself from time to time. That's a millennial thought, but it's a good one. I'm crashing out about this, but would it be funny if it had happened to Ben Stiller? Probably.
So this is where my
fine.
living under a rock is going to come in. Can you name like a movie or something that he's in? Because that name doesn't ring a bell.
Meet the Parents.
Never saw it.
You remember that movie? Oh, you didn't see Meet the Parents or Meet the Fockers with the little kid that signs poop, or the cat, or Robert. Oh my gosh, you have something to do
So
tonight.
I lived under a rock for 6 years and went to this thing called college and got a couple different licensures, but I still didn't engage in the, what is it called? Pop culture.
When did Meet the Parents is one I tell you that I can't really watch. This came out in 2000, Bessie. This came out 7 years before we graduated high school. But
I definitely wasn't watching TV.
It is a classic comedy. A classic comedy. It has Ben
Oh, and Meet
Stiller
the
in
Fockers
it.
was 2004. I just Googled it.
Yep. And then they made a couple of sequels. There's Meet the Fockers. There's Little
Oh,
Fockers.
that's his face.
Right. And the first one is Meet the Parents. And the basic premise of this film is watch him embarrass himself.
If you had said dodgeball, or Zoolander, or I don't know what else he's in.
This is the cringiest movie of all time, in my opinion. Meet the Fockers is the cringiest movie of all time because the full comedic premise of the film is watch this man embarrass himself, and he does. Oh, he does. He does, and he does it over and over again. But me being a bit of an empathetic person, a bit of an empath, it's painful. It's painful for me to watch. It goes further than embracing the cringe and deep into the.
That's all the time we have for today. Thank you for joining Therapy Unlocked as we unlock the mind one conversation at a time, discussing all things therapy from an unlocked perspective. You can find Therapy Unlocked on most major streaming platforms, wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. We are also present on YouTube and Instagram, and we hope that you will like, follow, subscribe, and join the conversation. We'll see you next week as we continue the dialogue and continue unlocking the mind one conversation at a time. Have a great one.